Welcome everyone. We are opening up the lines and I'm watching the numbers increase as you all join in. We'll start in a minute or so. You will all be muted as you join, and we'll take Q&A through another app that you'll hear more about as we go. All right. It's exciting to be here with you today. I'm Mary Long. Thank you so much for joining us. There are people who will continue to join, and but I'll get us started in the interest of time. As a quick reminder, you're muted right now, and we'll take Q&A through the Slido app that you'll get more information on as we go through the presentation. And anyone registered through before Monday did receive the white paper via an email, but you can click on the PDF that's listed in the GoToWebinar app. You can see that and download it from there as well if you registered after that. So thank you all so much for joining us today. It is kind of nice to have a slight break from other news to focus on the future of supply chain talent and the expanding opportunities to bring more inclusion and diversity into solving the challenges that we face. As you can see, Alex, if you don't mind, go into the next slide. Thank you. As you can see, we have an amazing panel. We'll do some introductions and then get started. Cassidy, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. So hey everyone, thanks for joining. My name is Cassidy Hunsucker. I graduated undergrad from the University of Tennessee in 2014 with a major in supply chain management and a concentration in international business through the Smith GLS program. I'm now back pursuing my master's in supply chain on the new online program at UT, as well as working full-time as a global demand manager at Elo Touch Solutions here in Knoxville. I also previously spent about 3 years in New Jersey working at Unilever as a supply planner for the Dove body wash line.
Thanks, Cassidy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Osteen. I'm a student in the Tricontinental Supply Chain Master's Program at the University of Tennessee. We've studied in the United States, China, and Germany. And in the past, I've worked in the automotive and flooring fields and logistics, free trade agreement, solicitation, customer service, and process improvement. But I'm currently spending my final semester doing my capstone project in procurement with SAIC.
Thanks, Claire. Caroline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Jones, and I am a senior studying supply chain management at UT. I'm in the same program that Cassidy was in, the Smith Global Leadership Scholars Program. I'm also a member of the Supply Chain Scholars of Distinction Program, and I'm a president of an organization called Nexus that I'll talk a little bit more about in just a minute. And I'll be graduating in May, and I'll be going to work for BP as an operations analyst in Chicago. So very excited about that.
Awesome. Thank you all, and I am Mary Long. I'm your moderator on this journey. I'm pretty new to academia, and I've been at UTK for about a year. I lead our supply chain forum and lecture, and then in my spare time, actually, Alex, you can advance. I had the great pleasure and honor to work with Diane Mollenkoff on this white paper. Diane's research has given a voice to a unique perspective and expectations of young women in our field. And so it was a real thrill to be able to work with her. And we're going to go to the next slide, and Caroline's going to tell you a little bit more about the organization that helped too with this research.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nexus is an organization at UT. It started a little over 3 years ago, and our primary focus is educating and empowering female supply chain students. It was initially started because there was, a noticeable gender gap in the major and kind of a lack of community among the female students. And generally we host 3 different types of events. We host events geared towards professional development, such as last semester we had an interview workshop to help members gain experience, answering interview questions. We also host events geared networking, like in the pictures you can see on the slides. This gives members a chance to actually practice engaging with professionals and developing their own network in college. I joined as a freshman, and these events were very pivotal for me because it kind of gave me a chance early on to start practicing talking with supply chain professionals and getting to know women in the field. And I think it gave me the upper hand when I started applying for internships and jobs and so forth. But also community is a big part of what we do. So we also try to host more informal events with members. Last beginning of the semester, we had an ice cream social with CSCMP, and just getting to know people, creating a sense of community. But as I said, I joined this organization as a freshman, and I think it's probably been the most important part of my college career. It's allowed me to develop myself far beyond what I would have expected. And it's given me great opportunities like this. And just being able to see other female students like me able to develop their own leadership skills has been really awesome. So it's a little bit about the Nexus organization.
Thanks, Caroline. And speaking of awesome, it was also Diane and our great pleasure to partner with Awesome to use their REACH framework and to provide some ideas for a path forward for both young professionals and for companies. If you're interested in Awesome too, check out awesomeleaders.org if you'd like to learn more. So I'm going to jump in now to some of the meat of the white paper. And this won't all be about the white paper. We'll talk to and do some polling of you all. But there's a lot of great research about the benefits of diverse and inclusive teams. The standout number here is the almost 20% bump in revenues that diversity brings to innovation. These more competitive companies win in the workplace, the marketplace, and the boardroom. So everything that happens in supply chain today, everything that's happening right now, it really just emphasizes the need for individuals, teams, and leaders to be both able and agile. So we made up a new word, agility. So we're gonna switch now to the next slide and talk about why do women choose supply chain management? So as Caroline mentioned, Nexus was formed to help advance more of this. So Alex, this slide builds, so just feel free to keep filling it out. We all landed in supply chain in different ways. So whenever a group of supply chain people come together, it's kind of one of the funny things that we all talk about. So Cassidy, I'd like you to get us started and tell us why did you choose supply chain? How did you land in here?
Sure. So when I got admitted to UT, I always knew I wanted to go into business, but I really didn't know, specifically what function or major. And my dad, who actually ran a business and worked in business his whole career, suggested I explore supply chain. He said it's a newer field and there's actually not a lot of women at all in it. So keep in mind, this is about 10 years ago or so, so I know that has changed some. But I remember him saying you could do really well in this field, especially as a woman. So I decided, I'll pursue it and try it. I started my classes, really enjoyed them, but I really didn't appreciate what supply chain had to offer until I started working and could see all the possibilities you can get within supply chain, all the different avenues it can lead you on, which is some of the exact things that this slide points out. And so that's kind of part of the reason why I am now pursuing my master's in supply chain, because for the foreseeable future, I want to remain in this field.
And Cassidy, I have to agree with you. Most all of the things on this slide really relate to my interests. I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Alabama, and I studied operations management there. But my specialization was in supply chain, so I got to attend some classes that introduced me to it. And it was something that interested me, and I knew I wanted to study more in graduate school. But I think what has kept me interested since then is the way that supply chain roles typically allow you to combine some of the more technical skills with your creativity and problem solving and getting to come up with new ideas to solve supply chain problems, getting to work with other people to do that is highly rewarding for me.
Right.
Totally agreeable to what Cassidy and Claire both said. I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to study when I started my career at UT. I knew I wanted business, but I really wanted to choose a major that would give me a lot of different opportunities, because I mean, as an 18-year-old, I didn't really know what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I saw what a great program that UT had for supply chain. And so I decided to choose that for a major, and you know, have just, as I've continued to take courses in it, have just grown to love it more and more, and love the diversity of different areas that you can work in. And, you know, I've enjoyed all of my internships. So yeah, I think just the breadth of opportunity is why I initially chose it and why I have enjoyed it so much thus far.
Thank you. I know this is what's so exciting about having supply chain as a field. It helps to bring together all these different avenues where before it existed really as a major, you know, people did literally fall into it in various ways. So I want to switch to kind of what I really, really love about this paper is the firsthand stories and the quotes, and that's some of what we're going to try to bring to life in the way that we're doing this panel, and with Cassidy, Claire, and Caroline sharing some of their stories and perspectives as well. I'd like to ask you all, does this quote especially resonate with you? And what about, like, how does this reflect what your expectations are about the opportunities and challenges ahead? If I don't have a set of claim for who wants to jump in here, but Claire, I'll pick on you. How about if you get us started?
I think I can certainly relate to this quote. I believe women are expected to be more prepared and conscientious in many things they do, and I think it's certainly the case in the workplace.
Yep. And Cassidy or Caroline, if you wanted to tag in on this one before we head to the polls, feel free.
I mean, I agree with what Claire said, and you know, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the specific challenges I think I have faced as a female in college and in my internships. But it's something I'm aware of. However, it's not something I think that I try to dwell on too much, because it also, you know, it pushes me to, you know, challenges push me to be better. So I try to take it in a positive way, I guess. But I certainly agree that the challenges, because I'm a female, do exist.
Yeah. So thank you both. And I think it's a good time for us to start seeing how the audience is feeling about this. So we have almost 400 people on the line. It is our time to try to engage you all in this discussion directly. And then also you'll get a chance to do Q&A. So if you've not used Slido before, it's super easy. Just go out to the website or join from your phone, and you enter the code 6191. And we will be taking Q&A through this as well as click to the live polls. So Alex, if you could just go back one slide, just so I point out one thing that sometimes tricks people up, if it's not too complicated to go back. You have two options up in the upper right there. You can do Q&A or polls. Just be sure to click to polls, and that's the next section that we're headed into. All right, let's get started. And my amazing panel is going to help facilitate these poll questions. So feel free to also ask Q&A questions as you're in there. We've got 7 quick questions for you. 5 of them are yes or no, and 2 require you to make a quick selection. So I think it is, let's see, Caroline is going to get us started.
Yes, ma'am. All right, we'll give everyone a few little bit to answer.
Yeah, so as you can see on this, there's a counter up in the upper right-hand corner.
Okay, this is interesting. So we're about half and half. That's really exciting to know that there are people who don't consider themselves minorities at work who are still, tuning into this webinar. It shows me that professionals are interested in learning about what people who are different than themselves are thinking about this topic. So I think that's really interesting. I'm excited about that.
Gaining a little ground. This is the first question. It's always a little more challenging for people to kind of get started. So I think we can always flip back to it if we feel like the number has significantly changed. But thanks, Alex. We're gonna go to this one now.
Oh, wow, it's interesting to see that there are quite a few who have been in the industry for quite a while, but a good number who are just entering the workforce. That's good. It seems like there's a pretty nice spread across.
Yeah, good distribution there. Okay. So
Okay. So
I think
now that we sort of have so now that we have a little bit better idea about who all is with us on the call, in your most recent role, have you ever felt the need to provide more evidence of your competence than others do? Okay, so it looks like a majority of us feel like we do have to provide additional evidence of our competence. And sort of piggybacking on that, in your most recent role, have you ever had your judgment questioned in your area of expertise? Okay, it looks like we've got some similar numbers. So I think we'll get to talk a little bit more around those subjects later in our discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting that, just a real quick interjection, it's interesting that even with a fairly balanced at the beginning, like whether or not you consider yourself a minority, still these things come out predominantly for all of us. So Cassidy, I think you're up next with the next ones.
We can flip. Yep. So in your most recent role, have you ever been addressed in a less than professional way?
Lots of quick yeses there.
Yes, so far this is very interesting. We asked these similar questions in our fall forum, and we actually had a lower percentage of yes than we're seeing today. So, when I was thinking about this question, I wondered if maybe, our current situation of, being remote or not in person is kind of maybe led to some of this, where people are saying things virtually, IM email that, you might not say face to face. So this is very interesting results compared to what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, that's a whole nother layer to it, is like, what does being virtually connected do to those kind of filters? Good point. So
I think, we have one more.
Yeah.
So kind of aligned, in your most recent role, have you ever heard demeaning remarks about you or people like you? Okay, so about half and half. similar in the fall form, we actually did see a pretty low percentage of yes versus no. So I'd say some of this might align with the previous question as well.
Yeah, that's actually encouraging, really, to not have that.
Yeah.
So we've got, I don't mean to, you know, cut anyone off. You are welcome to keep filling in the polls, but in the interest of time, and also to get to your Q&A, because you can, you know, feel free again to start asking questions. But Alex, if you could switch us to the last one of this section. Oh wait, oh I'm sorry. Go back one. I must have missed it. Yeah, so if any of these occurred, which was the most damaging to your productivity? So if you could click on that. There we go. Oh, no. It was the question before this, Alex. You had it up there. This one. There we go. Now we're cooking. It's interesting. These results are slightly different than what we've seen from when we've done this at the forum, and they're most of the answers, the majority, the thing that felt most damaging to productivity was the hearing demeaning remarks by a vast. That was more in the 34 to 40% range as the most impactful. Competence was more in the range of 25% if your competence was questioned. If your judgment was questioned, that was about the same. And being addressed in a less than professional way, that's about the same as these results here. I think we all just kind of roll with that. So interesting that the demeaning remarks did not come up as more prevalent. Perhaps that's, you know, something that the distance part of this has an impact on, and we're not kind of in an office environment where this everything. I don't know. It's kind of counter to what we were surmising on the one before. So we'll switch back then. Thank you very much for participating in this, and hopefully that was kind of more fun than just sitting and listening to us go through slides. But I'm gonna take us back to like a slide type of thing, and just, you know, part of the paper was calling out that those are microaggressions, and they can happen to anyone, so it's not a gender only thing. This was a really great recap of kind of what happens as offices get more diverse in any way, then these things lessen. So this is a term that's used for just a brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignity, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And so we're talking gender. As you'll hear us talk as we tell stories, you know, it could apply to your age or race or ethnicity, sexual orientation. You know, there are many different ways that we're not the same as people in that we work with. And so when people are in an organization and they're what would be like a position of power, or that group has more of a power dynamic over another group, then in that situation, they just might not realize how they treat others and the dynamic of their words or behaviors. So there are 3 specific findings related to young women that came out in this research, and we're going to dive into that now. So Alex, if you could switch. The first finding related to the unique challenges associated with transitioning from college to a professional setting. And what made this paper unique is the personal stories. So let's talk about some of the stories, either from your own experience or the paper, that relate to a few findings. And to kick us off with that, Cassidy's going to get us started.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working now for about 6 years or so, and kind of reflecting back on this, I would say definitely the most challenging and probably the most nervous I ever was about starting a job was my first one out of college. And I'm sure many people feel that same way, but there's a lot of different reasons that kind of go into this. You know, the paper talks about you come from this time in college where you might have been very involved or leading groups, you feel very confident in yourself, and that was very similar for me. And then you move into this company where you're very young and experienced. You might be a woman in a male-dominated industry or a minority in your workplace, and these all kind of lead to the struggle for adapting. So some of the things that really, you know, I like to reflect and think about that I kind of went through transitioning from college to my first job is you don't really feel the need, you do not need to feel the need to know everything from day one, and nobody's going to expect that from you. Especially when you start right out of college, or really in any role for that matter. When I worked at Unilever, they would say there's a 6-month learning curve for any new role, regardless if you are already at the company or not. So don't get hung up on trying to be perfect and falling into the perfection trap, which I believe Claire will talk about later. But kind of take this time instead to ask questions, start learning about the business and the team you work on, and don't harp on trying to prove yourself from the start. I think the next thing is don't sacrifice your happiness or your work-life balance to try to avoid making mistakes and striving to be perfect. I know many new hires will get burnt out quickly in their first role, just trying so hard not to mess up. When I was talking to some of my peers about this question, someone made a fun comment saying, you know, don't sit there and reread an email 50 to 100 times to make sure it's perfect before sending it out, because that's a waste of everybody's time. So I think it's very true to remember you're going to make mistakes, just continue to learn from them, and everyone at every single level of your organization makes mistakes. And I think the last quick thing I'll touch on is when you're brand new to a company, it's a perfect time to start building your network and meeting as many people as you can. I know, myself included, when my first internship or my first job, I felt like I just needed to stay in the scope of my work and do only my tasks and talk with my team. But you're really missing out on so many opportunities and experiences by doing this. So go meet people and set up one-on-ones and learn about different teams and departments, because that's how a lot of new roles and opportunities come up within your company. So I'll wrap things up, and just one comment from the paper that stood out to me is just remind yourself that you were hired to this role because the company believes in you. And so don't doubt yourself when you start out in your first job.
Thanks, Cassidy. The next section, if Alex, I'll talk as you're advancing, is the perfection trap. Claire, have you experienced this, or is there a story in the paper that particularly resonated?
Yes, you may have seen the TED Talk with freshman Johnny, where the story was relayed about some computer science students when they would enter their professor's office hours after having difficulty coding. The male students would come in and say, there's something wrong with my code. The female students would come in and say, there's something wrong with me. So it's that feeling of, if I can't do something perfect, there's something wrong with me. And as that's the feeling of young women in many fields, it's also the case in supply chain fields. So I'd like to tell you a story about a young woman during her supply chain internship. Her company used on-time in full, OTIF, as a key metric for their carriers, just like many of our companies do. And this particular company was very low at 11%. So with very little help from her manager, she was able to bring the carrier OTIF rate to 92%. Big change. She presented those results to her senior management, but her manager received the credit for her results, and he never acknowledged that it was actually her efforts that had achieved it. Later, she asked the manager to recommend her for a full-time position, and he said, "You're not good enough. I don't see any real results from your project. You should have hit 100% on time." It's kind of a heartbreaking story, but I think it depicts what can be the cause of young women feeling that perfection trap. If I don't hit 100%, I've completely failed. And in this instance, it seems like it's not just me who thinks that. My manager seems to think so too. So with that story in mind, I think that leads into what Caroline's going to talk about next, about being respected and valued.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, let's transition to, I think that's a really great segue. So Caroline, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk with you all a little bit about gaining respect and being valued, and how this kind of relates with navigating new roles as a young female. I want to talk first about an idea that the white paper discussed in this section, and it's something that really resonated with me in college. And it's that young women are often pushed into organizer roles in projects. Like I said, this resonated with me because being in supply chain, which is a major where there isn't nearly as many females, I find myself in group projects all the time where I'm the only female. And, it's a combination of me liking to naturally get things done, but I often do find myself falling into this role where at the beginning I'm organizing the to-do list for everyone, and at the end I'm kind of the one who is going through the slide deck and making sure everything is formatted nicely, or making sure that there are no errors in the report. So something that I'm really trying to learn is how to stay on track with projects without being the team member who always falls into that role. Because ultimately there are times when I feel like I could have truly learned more or gotten more out of the project if I wouldn't have felt like I had to keep up with what everyone else was doing. And I also fear that if I let this behavior carry over into a job, that it's going to prevent me from actually proving myself using the skills I was hired for, and gaining respect in that way. So I think the most important thing is that young women like me have to acknowledge if this is occurring, and make a more concerted effort to place boundaries, because regardless of gender, people are going to take advantage of you if you let them. And I think learning how to navigate situations like that just takes practice. But to kind of transition it into the professional world, one of the biggest fears young women have is being taken seriously and doing a good job in their first role. And Cassidy touched a lot on this. I think it's something everyone feels to a certain extent in their first role, but in a supply chain context, it's more common that you might find yourself on a team where you're one of the only women, or you're the only woman, and it kind of amplifies those anxieties. And I really love the quote from the white paper that was from Madeleine Albright, who was the first female Secretary of State. She said there's plenty of room for mediocre men, but there's no room for mediocre women. And I think that's something that I unconsciously have sort of felt in a lot of ways in college and internships. Have always naturally worked hard, but I think being a woman, you do, like, for me, I understand that I can't just perform to the status quo if I want to be successful. And lastly, just one more thing I kind of want to talk about that I've struggled with in gaining respect in internships is finding things in common with my male superiors. And I think most of us would probably agree that relationship building isn't just about talking about work. There's also a more personal element to it. And people connect better when they have other things in common. And I'm not meaning to stereotype in any way, but in my past experience for males, it seems like that's often sports. And I've been in situations where I felt a little disconnected from my managers and felt like it was hard to kind of build a rapport with them because I didn't really make much small talk with them, or couldn't find things in common, but I would see, they would be cutting up with the other male interns about baseball games or golf. And it's certainly not that they're doing anything wrong. I just think that male managers need to be, more cognizant that they aren't showing unintentional bias towards a man versus a woman just because they aren't able to relate to them more. And I think that can be translated across anyone with, talking or building relationships with anyone that is not like them. So those are just some things I have seen in my personal experience that have gotten in the way of gaining respect. But I think ultimately, like, the first and most important step to getting over that from a business standpoint is being aware of it. Managers becoming more aware of it, but also the young females themselves understanding that the unconscious bias is there. So yeah, that's kind of my takeaway from it and from the paper.
Thanks, Caroline. I've been monitoring the Q&A as they've come in, and you answered one question already. You've all answered some of these already. It's about how do you make your voice heard. So I think that was a great recap of, it's multi-pronged. It's your internal resilience and resources and experience, and just continuing to build on those and leverage that. And then it's also with the help of others that they observe too behaviors and help to offer guidance or kind of shift cultural dynamics into a more positive and inclusive way. So I just want to remind everyone, I see a ton of questions, so thank you. You can upvote questions too if you would like to have something come up more prominently to the top. That's generally what we'll try to do as we're taking Q&A, is take the ones that seem to be getting a lot of acceleration. I'm gonna switch us to, I'll keep monitoring those. We might jump back to that. But in the meantime, we'll talk about the areas that best practice companies are using and how they stand out. Like, what are the things that they're doing? So Caroline, Claire, and Cassidy are each going to take one of these and give us some commentary, color commentary on that. So Caroline, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off with culture.
Yeah, I think, and I talked a little bit about this just now, but I think, managers and companies in general, just being aware of the challenges that women and, other minorities face in the workplace is super important. And, especially for my generation, who, as I'm sure most of you all know, we are a generation who does not feel the need to stay at one company for our entire career. So, the companies that are succeeding at maintaining diverse workforces are finding ways to retain them as well. And, it's very important as a young female for me to see that I have the opportunity to have my voice heard in a company, and that I am going to, I'm going to be in a comfortable environment. And I think companies will fall behind if they don't understand this, because, the research had shown on the first or second slide of this PowerPoint that more diverse workforces are more innovative. I mean, it's good for your business to have a diverse work group. So, understanding the importance of diversity, I think, from a company culture standpoint, is only going to help the company. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Great, thank you. Claire, what about mentoring? Yeah. Should companies?
Yeah, what about mentoring? Sometimes I think it happens organically in the workplace, but sometimes it's part of a structured program, and I think both can be very enriching. The participants in the studies for this white paper said that they appreciated having some very experienced senior professionals mentor them, as well as mentors who are more like peers and could help them transition through how things work at a new company or a new workplace. But I think mentoring is often thought of as a way for people to give and receive advice and guidance. But maybe something I tend to consider less is how a mentor can really be an advocate. If someone is experiencing gender bias or some other bias, I think having a mentor who's looking out for my best interests, they can speak up for me, they can advocate for me, makes all the difference. So I I think taking advantage of a mentoring program or seeking out someone on your own to be a mentor can sort of combine that aspect of receiving guidance and of having an advocate for any young person in the workplace.
I agree. I mean, from I'm trying not to jump in with a bunch of my stories or anything like that, but on this one too, one of the really formative things for me were that when I would feel somewhat frustrated by something that happened, and most often I had many guys who were my mentors as I came up. They really helped me see things from a different perspective. They would kind of share the context of why I might be interpreting something that actually had a different lens to it. And I found that invaluable for kind of learning the language of navigating that, oh, you know, so many people see things different ways. And also, I think that sometimes I helped them see areas of opportunity for how things could be different. So, Cassidy, if you wouldn't mind, could you kick us off with flexible work policy?
Sure. Yep. So I would say before the current situation we are in right now, many companies were already moving in the direction of offering flexible work policies, you know, as a competitive advantage or a way to retain good talent. I know our generation seeks out companies that offer work from home and flexible work schedules. I think this is really important, you know, for working mothers or really any working parent, or maybe someone needing to care for a sick family member while they continue to work, as the paper works out. Or as the paper points out, I think this allows the employee to continue to work for your company. You can keep that good talent, and it also kind of keeps morale high, knowing that your company supports their life outside of work. However, looking in today's situation where many people are being forced to stay home and work from home, I think this is offering a very interesting perspective on this topic. So companies that might have not previously offered working from home or were against flexible work policies are being forced to do it now and learning how to do it on the spot, how to manage it. So I think there'll be a lot of good lessons learned from this time period, hopefully for the better, to show more companies how they can operate and learn what work can be done in the office and what work could be done remotely and on employees' own time. So I think this is going to open up a lot more opportunities for productivity and in today's world to kind of learn how we can manage and offer more flexible work policies throughout different companies. Because I really do think a lot of people look for this in a company when they are job searching and looking at different benefits and opportunities.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm gonna, we have a lot of questions. So actually one thing that this points out, and Rick, I know you're on the line, so we can talk about this afterwards, but there continue to be more questions coming up. This might be something that we do a phase 2 with other, maybe the Young Professional Committee at CSCMP or something, because there are more questions than we'll possibly be able to get to. So in the interest of time, and rather than making this be the slides, which you can see later, Alex, I'm going to have you switch to the next one, because I think that's a poll question. And then as that's coming up, panel, the one question that has gotten a lot of responses or upvotes is, I'll go to the one about, in answering these questions, I found that my age they're in the 20s, often came to mind as a barrier more often than gender. What role has intersectionality played in each of your work experiences? Has, as you've done internships or as you've been in the field, has it been gender or age? What do you think?
I can speak to this because my current job right now, I am actually one of the youngest in the company, and I am the only woman on my team right now. So I'm kind of hitting on both of these. And I think personally, this has kind of fueled me to work harder and prove that I can do the job just as well as anybody at any age and any gender. So in my current job, I think this has actually helped me to work harder and, you know, just prove that I can do the job just as well as anybody else can.
Thanks, Cassidy. And I don't know, I mean, I think that this is something that we're all learning as we go. So I think it's hard. As I don't know, Claire or Caroline, if you have a, set opinion or have experience that you want to share on that one. The other question that's gotten a lot of votes is, at 38, I returned for a bachelor's in integrated supply management, graduating at 40 in June. Congratulations. And I'm feeling age discrimination as far as internships and job offers. Any tips for non-traditionals? And I think that that one is different than what our, like the focus of this panel is, but I'll let you weigh in if you want. And I was a non-traditional when I graduated. I was 28 when I graduated from my undergrad. So when I got my MBA, we had our first son and everything. So it is, I think, a unique journey. And I do think that some of the things that are on this slide that are up about what's been most helpful in advancing your career, it's finding a network. I don't mean to do a shameless plug for CSCMP, but actually they helped me tremendously in my career learn skills about connecting and networking. So I think that obviously you are probably already connected and a part of that. Tap those, go to the roundtables, reach out to the leaders in those organizations, volunteer to be a part of that. And I know that's a lot in your spare time, but anyway, the jobs you'll get are from the people you meet, not from the postings that you see anywhere. So hopefully that helps with that one. There have been questions about the process of could we ask gender questions? Was the demographic different across these? We have not asked demographic questions about gender or age. That is a good future thing to consider. But in the interest of time and really, frankly, based on my skill set at trying to do that on the fly in Slido right now, we'll just leave it as that is a very good suggestion, but we will not be able to get to it today. I'll go to one more and then we'll quickly, actually, Alex, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So thank you again all for participating in that. We have about 10 minutes left, so we still have time for questions. And I'm gonna, panel, take us to one that, I wanna say again, what I found so powerful personally about this paper is the honesty and frankness of the young women who were interviewed, either members of Nexus early in their career, supply chain, women in supply chain, and the quotes that they said and the stories they told really resonated. So I'm going to leave this up while I go back to the questions and say, this is in answering, let's see, being judged not only for being a woman, but also when you're around 30s, about being a mother and the incapability to be a good professional. How have you managed with it? And I think that everyone on this panel isn't to that point yet, and I could give a 1-point opinion, but it probably won't be super helpful. So again, Rick, I'm going to do a shout out for, I think that there are many ways that we could take the interest in this and go further with it. So I'm going to just move us along on that one. Do you have recommendations for gaining sponsorship and mentors? So Claire, Caroline, and Cassidy, if you could offer some insights on how you have done that and what tips you'd give.
I can
well,
take this one.
one
Oh,
thing-
go ahead. Go ahead, Claire.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Oh, I was just saying, you know, I think getting involved. Mary's already plugged CSCMP, but I know for a fact that CSCMP like has mentoring programs that you can get involved with and get connected to mentors through. But it's all about having the courage, if you're in a job already, to reach out to people who are two levels above you. And I mean, from my experience in internships, people like to help younger people. And if there's a way to go about it, but I think just having the courage to say, hey, like, can I learn a little bit more about what you do? And, I think a lot of the times the best mentors happen naturally. I've gotten some great mentors from programs. I know Nexus does a mentorship program, and I've met some great ladies through that have given me a lot of wonderful advice. But beyond just organized programs, I think you can find the best mentors by seeking them out yourself, and just having the courage to ask. And that's probably the best advice I've given, because that's what has worked for me. And I know a lot of the companies that I've interned for have also had mentorship programs set up. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
I agree with Caroline. I think probably the ask is the most difficult part of it once you've found someone, but in finding someone, it might be looking for someone who's where you want to be. That's maybe the obvious route, or maybe a less obvious route is looking for someone who's done a lot of different things in their career that you could ask, and they can share what were the better parts of that. What direction do they see you going? I think that kind of person who has a variety of information and experience to pull from in different areas of a business can also be very helpful in a mentor.
I think the last thing I would add as well is, so I've worked for 3 different companies already, and it's important to keep in touch with the people that you've worked with at different companies. Your mentor doesn't necessarily need to be at your current company. So I'd say that's something important to remember, is just keep those connections. You never know when you might, 1, go back to that company, or 2, you want to reference or talk to them about something they've experienced at a different industry, different organization, how they've dealt with it. So mentors can be in any shape or form at any company. They don't even have to be in any of the companies you've worked with, just somebody you might have gone to school with, a professor you had. It's really important to keep those connections throughout your career.
Thank you. Thanks all. Alex, if you could advance, I'm gonna just get us to that panel slide. These are closing thoughts. Again, you can read those when you download the paper, and actually advance again, Alex, so that we get to the, so that as folks are answering, people can associate again who's speaking. So there is a question, do you feel that your dress in the office also determines how superiors take you seriously? Would anyone want to comment on that one? I mean, I think it depends. I'll just weigh in if for what it's worth. I mean, I think that it depends, like how extreme that the difference is than a norm. So basically, dress is about norming. It's not about gender. Men can be, kind of, they can not fit the norm of what any group that they're in might be, and they might get razzed on that, or I don't even know if that's a word anyone uses anymore. But so I think that sure, it might. Should it define you if it's not like an extreme difference? Then I would say that goes again both ways. It's how open and acceptive and inclusive is the culture that dress defines exactly how you're thought of, or also how well do you help people on board and norm, to the culture. So I don't know if that really answered everyone's question on that one, but feel free, panel, if you want to weigh in on that one. Otherwise, The next one is, I have 2 daughters who I'd love to see follow a supply chain career path. What is your advice on how to drive and then foster that interest, especially in young women? So do you all have an idea of how to kind of trigger that spark of interest?
Well,
Caroline,
I'm thinking
Nexus?
of something.
Go on, Claire.
Oh, okay.
Go for it.
I'm just thinking of something I like to do just for fun even now, and that's go on a plant tour. If you're younger, if your daughters are younger, then that may be something they've never done before. It's not something I'd ever done before I had my first internship, and it was a whole new world for me, but an exciting one where you get to see how something's made. I'd say if you have the opportunity to go on a plant tour near you, I would do it just so you can sort of see this is how things work in manufacturing, and you can start to see, oh, there's a world behind all the goods that are on the shelf at the grocery store, wherever it is. And that's all about the movement of products from point A to point B, from the raw materials to shipping it to someone down the road to the end user. And I think that's a fun way you can get your kids involved and sort of know the background of that and see if it's something they're interested in.
I think in addition to that, just making sure that your children understand what what a variety of opportunities are offered in supply chain. I mean, my dad is actually the one who first told me, like, hey, you should look at this major, because I mean, I think a lot of kids think, oh, I want to be X when I grow up. But once you get to an age where you're like high school and you're really having to choose your major, most people that age are pretty unsure of what they want to do. And so a real draw to supply chain for me was that I wasn't limiting my my potential career paths. There's so many different functions. I mean, but educating them on what supply chain is, because before I really understood it, I thought it was, trucking and transportation. Like, I didn't know any better. And through getting involved in organizations like Nexus, I learned that I can go into procurement, I can do more analytical roles, I can do operations roles, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that I'm going to be in a distribution center. But also, being in a distribution center or a plant isn't as bad as some young females might perceive it to be. So I think just making sure that kids understand how many possibilities there are is key, and it's really what sold me on it as a young person.
Yep, thanks. I think that's great. And this question from Paula, Claire, and Caroline: have you chosen what area of supply chain, or have any of you chosen what area of supply chain you want to work in, and how did you come to choosing it? This relates to Kevin O'Meara. Shout out to you. I saw that you had also asked, are there areas of supply chain, are there specific areas where, as a woman, the environment is more uncomfortable? Like, for example, operations versus like demand planning or something. How do you choose is basically the question. Supply chain is so broad. So Cassidy, I'm actually going to point this toward you first, since you actually have made a couple choices in where you're going, and then Claire will go to you. And we are going to end up slightly over time. So if anyone has to jump off, feel free. We'll do this as the last question. And I thank you all so much for dialing in and joining. And there's definitely so much momentum around this. I'm sure we'll do some other kind of follow-up. So thanks. And Cassidy, close us out with this one.
Sure. So I felt the same way when I was in supply chain, even my senior year, thinking what positions would be best for me. My decision was kind of driven more by the company. So what company, what kind of positions were they offering, and not only that, what kind of positions are out there past your first one. So I chose supply planning because Unilever at the time had that opening, and I knew about the company. I knew they recruited heavily at Tennessee, so they were involved with our school, and so I got into that role, and I fortunately really enjoyed it, and understood it. But then I also started to work, I got to work with the procurement team, I got to work with the demand planning team, and say that I was unhappy in supply planning. You get to, once you're in a role, you get to experience how the other roles work and operate. And then, if you're fortunate to be in a company that fosters the movement around to different roles, then you can, talk to your manager or whoever about, I like supply planning, but I'm really more interested in procurement now that I get to work with that team and see what they do. So for me, the company was my decision first. So I wanted to work at Unilever, a big CPG company. And then I got to experience all the different roles that the company offered. But the important thing to remember that I think all three of us have touched on is supply chain has so many different fields and opportunities within it, and you're most likely never going to get stuck in the one you start with. So if you truly don't enjoy it, there's so many opportunities to move into something else. So it's really important, like I think I said in one of my earlier comments, start meeting other people in different departments and different teams, and you start to find out what you like and don't like.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great way to wrap this up, because I do think that that's the best thing about supply chain is your skills are cumulative. So whatever you've done in one area, it builds and you can use it somewhere else. So again, thank you all so much. Thanks so much to my amazing panel. I really want to do a shout out to the folks at CSCMP who helped pull this together, Alex, Nicole, and Wendy. And a special thank you and major shout out to our Director of Marketing at the University of Tennessee, Michelle Painter, for helping me to pull the information together in a more summary way for all of you. So I hope you enjoyed this. Alex, if you wouldn't mind going to the last poll question. We would love to get your feedback if you have time to stay on. There are a few hundred of you still left. So I don't know, Alex, if you can pull up that last poll. Yep. If you could just give us your feedback, it really helps us a lot to know how to land these sessions for all of you. I really appreciate, we all do, your participation. And thanks for playing with us today.